Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. So today I have with me Mark Knowles. Mark was a key member of the Australian men's hockey team, the Kookaburras, from 2003 to 2018, and has been co-captain or captain from 2009. Has played 324 international matches and was named World Player of the Year in 2014. In his hockey career, Mark has played 4 Olympic Games, winning gold in 2004 and bronze in both 2008 and 2012. Has played 3 World Cups, winning gold in 2 and silver in another. Medalled in 4 Commonwealth Games, named Australian Player of the Year 4 times, and was the 2014 World Cup Player of the tournament and the 2018 Commonwealth Games opening ceremony flag bearer. So
Thank you,
since
Jess.
you're welcome. I'm here for all the introductions, but since 2017 and in the time following your retirement from representative international hockey,
Yep.
You've been working hard in areas of athlete wellbeing with Queensland Academy of Sport and now currently as National Technical Lead with Hockey Australia. So you've really dived into working on the background, almost foundations of the sports and the athletes itself as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I love the people side of the game, and I think more and more research, more and more of what you're doing around understanding the importance of relationships, communication is actually helping athletes become better. And I think that's the part that I've really enjoyed in both roles, is that the training, like the swimming laps or the hitting hockey balls, is very important, but very rarely do you get to a position of either elite or success without having your life sorted in the background. So it's been a nice transition for me from being an athlete to the well-being side, and now working with younger athletes again.
Yeah, I bet. And I think that's probably what resonated for me, like when we originally met, is just recognizing that you had that focus as well of like, well, where's the well-being? And it's not just about, oh, do they go to therapy or do they, whatever this, it's about what are the skills, like the life skills that are being built up and being taken care of there. But I want to talk about you specifically and your experience and your journey, because you're the guest of honor here. But like representative hockey is a bit of an institution here in Australia, on an international level in particular, in both men's and women's teams. Do you remember what it was like when you first stepped into that arena of elite sports?
It was something that I wanted to do. I think probably since, I reckon when I was about 13 or 14, I started to think about being a hockey player. My parents were both state level players. I grew up in country Queensland, where it was life. It was what you wanted to do.
Sport is life. Yeah,
sport is life. And then I first made the Australian men's team in 2003. It was probably just one of those moments where you just think to yourself, this is finally happening. I can't believe how good this is. But my journey is an interesting one. I've shared this with a few people, but the first day that I made the Australian men's team, like my dream had come true, and I broke my ankle. So the first day that I arrived, I broke my ankle. So I basically just had to sit, watch, observe, like feel what high performance was without being in it. And then 4 months later, going through all of the rehab and allowing the guys to do all of their running, their gym, while I sat on a rolling chair doing my own stuff or boxing. My first training session back 4 months later, it was an actual dream. I got out in the field with the cookers and the coaches for the first time, and I broke my ankle again.
Oh, Jesus, Mark.
So my first year in the Australian men's hockey team in 2003, 12 months before the Athens Olympics in 2004, I didn't train one session with the national team. Jeez. So for a 19-year-old kid whose dream had finally come true, it was a very hard year for me.
Yeah, I bet it would have felt scary as well, of like, is this going to be taken away from me when I just got it? I think there's something in my memory, but I can't place it, of like, I'm sure there's a book written about like a different team's experience or a different person experience of how they learned so much by almost like sitting on the bench, and they took that opportunity to learn and to soak in from a different perspective. Do you feel like that, like, because I can kind of see how it might have, but do you feel like that changed how you approached your leadership in the game, because you eventually became like the leader of the team for several years?
I think it changed the way I led later on. But for me, like when I looked back on that time, when I became a little bit more experienced, I don't believe I was ready to be in that environment. And I actually think by just watching and learning, because I was 19 or I was 18,
Yeah.
I moved
Yeah, you were
from
a baby. Yeah.
to Brisbane for a year, straight to Perth, and I actually had no idea of what high performance was. Like I needed to see, hear, like feel what elite behaviors, what mindset was, what an elite culture looked like and felt like, and you had to act in. I actually needed some time to see what that was like. And by not training and having to worry about my own personal performance, I actually just got to buy into what actually the values and the behaviors and the expectations were. And I honestly think that 6 months of being injured actually allowed me to stay in the game for so much longer. But it also actually allowed me to hit the ground even after 6 months out so much better. Because I thought to myself, when I first trained on that day in December, 9-10 months after I first went there, I'd felt it and seen it for 6, 7, 8 months. So it's just normal for me, but I hadn't actually done it. So I do think major benefit, especially now when I share that story in a world where everyone wants everything now. They don't want to train for 4 years for the Olympics. They want to train for 4 weeks.
You can't for the Olympics. Like, I mean, I know you know, but that doesn't make sense at all.
No.
I think that's really powerful, because like there's a delayed gratification in that, but it's not that you're doing nothing. It feels like it's really creating this fortitude, like you said, you use the word values, fortitude, and this alignment with the values without feeling distracted as a young kid trying to prove himself, like, going, oh, I'm here, I have to, like, that can be a huge distraction, I imagine. So
I also think the other massive positive for me was it allowed the players in the squad who didn't know much about me as a young kid, it allowed them to see that I was willing to do anything to be part of their group, even though I couldn't hit and train and run. So every time they were in the gym, I was in the gym. Every time they were on the field, I was on the side of the field doing ropes or boxing. Every time they did a recovery session, I did a recovery session. Like I never skipped a session. And I think that showed the guys, okay, this must be pretty hard for a young kid who's never had anything go wrong. But look at him. And that's what that was the biggest piece of feedback I got from the coaches at the time was, mate, just keep doing everything you're doing, because the boys love it that you're not sitting here moping around, sooking, dangling your head, saying, oh, I wish, or why me? I said, you're doing everything they're doing, all the same commitments, you're just not hitting and trapping or running. And I thought that's a big confidence boost for a young kid.
Yeah, I bet. And I like, because it would be so easy, especially with that challenge and being faced with that challenge, to kind of to just go like, well, what can I do? Like, especially when you have, like, when you're so young already, like you don't necessarily have that awareness or the wherewithal to go, oh, there's a different way I could approach this. Like, oh, I could just show up, like you said, like show up to the gym when they show up to the gym, and because I'm still part of the team, it just looks a bit different.
No, it was definitely a big learning curve for me early on. I took a lot of confidence out of that.
Yeah, I bet. From that perspective, and then your experience as the years went on, what do you feel like is the most standout part of, or requirement, let's say, of leadership in sports in that way, from your experience?
I think it's a challenging one, because I'm a massive believer that leadership constantly evolves. And
True.
I mean, if I look through either the people who've led me or the way that I've led at different stages of my career, I've done it differently, and some have worked and some haven't. And I think I'm someone who I'm okay with saying that I completely stuffed that up. Like I did it wrong. At the time, it didn't feel wrong. But when I found an alternative way, or someone shared with me a story, thought, yeah, that's why it didn't work, or that might have been why it didn't work. And I do believe that if you think, or whenever you think you know everything as a leader, you're in a lot of trouble. So for me, the big three things I reckon around leadership is you got to understand self. So it's very hard to lead others without understanding yourself. And I think a big piece around leadership, if I was speaking to people, is it takes a while to understand yourself and who you are and the type of person you've grown up being compared to the person you want to be, because they can be different. But certainly some self-exploration is required. Once you understand yourself, it's a lot easier to lead others. So I always talk about leading self and leading others. The leading others part for me is where my career went wrong. My leadership journey was the most disappointing part, because I actually took it too far and I tried to tell everyone what to do, and I tried to tell everyone how to do it. And all I thought was, I just got to lead others. I just got to tell them what to do. And I actually stopped leading a bit for myself and for the actual game or the people. And so leading others, I think, is the most difficult. And the part that gave me the most joy was leading for the future. You know, when I got out of a point late in my career where I knew that at some stage it was going to end. And if I keep everything to myself, the game's never going to be better for my time. And I think that's the part that I'm most grateful about, is how I led for the future players. And I've been retired for, 4 years nearly, 3.5, 4 years. And it still makes me very proud that those guys talk about how I led in the last 3 years to help them in their leadership now. And I mean, for me, that's powerful leadership when it lasts for a period of time or a generation. You're doing something, you've done, or you're doing something right.
I just got like goosebumps like at that thought, because it's like this legacy, right? It's this, it's almost like that kind of existential view of like, what is the point of what we're doing unless we're making an impact, like a positive impact in some way, and leaving behind something maybe a little bit better than when we came into it.
And I can't remember, I don't remember who the quote is, but someone said, they'll never remember what you said, they'll always remember how you made them feel. And I mean, for me, the winning and the success of on field, and being quite a demonstrative, highly driven player. Like, people will talk about my legacy of playing, but I also think they'll talk about the way that I hopefully made them feel, especially late in my career. Some of the middle of my career, some people wouldn't be so complimentary. But that's also learning. You don't know everything when you're a country kid from Rocky.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, how much do you get to know before you learn it anyway? And it sounds like that's actually one of the key things about leadership that stood out for you, is like the willingness to learn. And the willingness to sort of be wrong, or even if you're not wrong, the willingness to recognize that there is a different way, or a better way, or a more learned way.
Yep. No, I agree. Very, very important that one way doesn't fit all. And I learned that through being a co-captain compared to being sole captain. Like, your messages have to be different to different generations at different times, in winning, in losing, in poor performance, in good performance, in relationships, in people. So they're big. There's a lot to leadership, but that's why people are searching and constantly trying to improve their leadership, because there's just so many pieces, so many facets to it.
And as we learn more, we see different perspectives, and we have different understandings and nuances, and even like the emotional intelligence aspect of how we're dealing with other human beings. So that's required as well. What was it like co-captaining with two others? Because there were three of you, three co-captains at the same time for a few years.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, for a number of years.
What was that like? That sounds interesting.
I mean, in some aspects it was very good. Like, the three leaders got to in some people's minds, it's easier for three to be able to influence and lead a national squad of 27 rather than one.
Yeah,
So that
true.
was the reasoning for it. Like, you need
Yeah.
diverse leaders. My leadership style of wanting more, asking more, the way I speak might not work for all 27. So the
Mm,
idea was to try and divvy up the leadership to touch different players and groups at different times. The challenge in that, and the challenge that we definitely found, and one of the reasons why we changed was, for me, I didn't, when I wasn't the captain, so every day the captaincy would swap, my biggest challenge with it was I struggled to not be the leader all the
mm,
time.
yeah.
So we kind of, we would mix and mingle between leadership styles on every given day, and then it got too much. And then what
Mm.
happened was the 2 or 3 or 4 captains, we went to 5 captains at one stage, but
Wow.
the 2 or 3 others used to basically just switch off when it wasn't
Yeah.
their day to lead. And that's what the coach said when he changed it back to 1. He said, guys, it's just not working, because on the day that you're not the captain, you guys aren't leading at all.
Mm,
He said, whereas you should be still leading, you're just not the captain on the game. You're just not the only voice. So we didn't do
yeah.
it. I don't think we did it well enough. But it was also at a stage in my career where I was 24.
Mhm.
I wasn't ready to lead a national team on my own. So for me, it gave me a really nice insight for, 4.5 years of the things that I do well, the things that others do well, and the things that I just don't want to do when I lead. And that
Mm,
wasn't because I didn't like the people who were doing it. It was just, it didn't work for me.
yeah.
So multiple views on co-captaincy. At the time, very good, because I would much rather have been a co-captain
Yeah.
than not a captain at all. But I couldn't have been the sole captain when I was 24.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know athletes have a different kind of perception of age and what that means, but it's 24 feels so young to me to like, like,
Well, I didn't lead at my best until I was 30, so
yeah, see,
you're
yeah.
talking that it's 6 years too young, and I retired at 34 as the national captain.
Yeah. And
So
that makes more sense to me. Like, even like your frontal lobe is more fully developed by the
yeah,
time you
after 25.
yeah, exactly. So it makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Um, and you're right about like it would be, I can see how it'd be easy to kind of switch off if you weren't the captain on that
Mm.
particular day, because it's like you're kind of trying to give respect to the
Yeah,
person who was the captain for that day, but also the perspective that leaders never really switch off.
never stop. Leadership doesn't
Yeah,
stop.
it doesn't matter the role that you're in, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I
Um,
just felt, when I look back, I just think we could have done it a bit better. Like, you don't have to be
mm,
the voice on the day, but you can still lead in another way to take pressure off
yeah,
someone else. You
yeah.
could lead a subgroup rather than leading a team. So it's definitely a learning opportunity for me. At that
Mm.
stage in my career, I needed that.
And it sounds like it gave you almost like kind of like the leadership or the captaining training wheels as
Yeah,
well,
well,
because
yeah,
yeah, which is useful for people, because sometimes I feel like in any area, in corporate, in sports, in wherever, we kind of put people in, we put people in leadership positions, but don't always give them like adequate training or tools to build their skills to meet that position as well.
yeah. And that was a huge change for me in terms of when I led close or at my best. I got
Mm,
proper leadership training.
yeah,
I got a mentor,
yeah.
constant feedback from coaches, players, cultural, on field, off field. So leadership does take some training,
Hmm.
and I think we have to be very careful, as you said, to think that young people, and I mean athletes, are young most of the time.
They're young. Like, I
Um,
watch, you watch any games now and you're like, oh,
yeah,
like
but
so young.
yeah, even for me, I was 34 and I retired. That's still very
Yeah,
young in leadership. You're
yeah.
talking business leaders, very few are leading a business before they're
Mm,
35 or 40. So, I
yeah.
think we need to be very careful that we put people in a position of leadership
Hmm.
without giving them some training. And the training part certainly helped me.
Yeah, I imagine. Um, what what was your approach like? So tell me a little bit about your style of communication and how you learnt, like, so beyond the co-captaincy, what were some catalyst moments where you realized, oh, I did that wrong, or oh, I could have, were there any moments like that?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah. I mean, I'm a massive self-reflector, and
Yeah.
that's in terms of my playing style or my playing performance, but also the way that I interact and communicate with people. I think for me, you got to, I think a couple of things is you got to learn when you lose, but you've also got to learn when you win. Like so often in sport, we only do a debrief when we lose, or if we win a tournament, you don't debrief it as hard as you would if you lost. And I think for me, that was a little bit around my leadership. I probably got a lot better at understanding some of the things that I did really well. And, you try and play to your strengths. And I certainly did that, I think, throughout my career. I understood what my strengths were and what people saw my strengths as. But you've also always just got to be chipping away at little things, and, for me, just little things like how I interacted or treated players of different generations, so I was 34 and I'm playing with a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And why aren't they more like us, or why doesn't he do it like this, or why don't they want to spend more time? Well, actually, why don't you just go and ask, spend some time, instead of sitting in a room with the plus 30s. It's a really, really, really major importance for me on tour of getting to know people better. And that doesn't mean they'll tell you everything. It just means that when it's tough, or when you say something you either know you shouldn't have, or that needs to be said, you're a better chance of that message being, accepted or taken on board. So a lot of things that over my career I did wrong. I know that, some big losses and just some stupid uses of language, and you don't understand that until you mature enough to know that it was wrong, and mature enough to know how to follow it up. And I think that's one of the big learnings that our team did when we went to another level was at times you're going to say stuff that you either regret or that you shouldn't have said, or that was said in the wrong tone. But how do you follow it up? Because tomorrow is a new day. And in sport, like, you win and lose a semi-final and a final 2 days in a row. These things linger for a week, and we talk about professional codes a lot. In the AFL, NRL, or cricket, it's fine, because you play on a Sunday, you say something to someone that you didn't want to say, you got 6-7 days to follow up. We play 6 matches in 8 days.
That's a short turnaround.
You imagine something lingering that shouldn't for 3 days, and suddenly your team falls apart and you've lost 2 matches and you're not in the finals anymore. So, I mean, our urgency and importance on communication and connection was huge for that main reason.
How did you learn to follow it up?
Constant practice.
Thank you. Yes, you practice communication. Oh my God.
As uncomfortable as it was, we used to, for 2 hours every week, we used to have our cultural, psychology cultural, we'd call it more cultural session. And we would just have constant conversations. We'd have to talk to a player who just missed selection, or who played in the same position and was the last player dropped. We used to have scenario-based work where your best friend and you live together, and he didn't make the team, or you didn't make the team. Like, how do you react to that message? We had plenty of things where we would bring people into the room as a captaincy or a leadership group, and we'd talk to them really openly about our expectations and the culture that follows our men's hockey team, and that we will make mistakes. Like, you've made a mistake, or we've made a mistake, but how do you not make that happen 5 times? How do you only have this as the once or twice off? So we just put a lot of work into it, and I think the more that you talk about the importance of follow-up and of communication, the easier it will become. And I always say, like, the one conversation a year is bloody tough. But
Yeah.
if you have 10 of those a year, after 5, it becomes so much easier.
You're speaking to me. like this
No,
is
it was important for
everything
us.
I teach. Yeah, like it sounds like you're right. Oh, there's so much in there. You're right. Like there's when we build something up and avoid it, like those tough conversations, which would be tough in some of those scenarios that you just talked about, like that would be so tough. And when everything's so heightened and you train so hard and sacrifice so much, and like maybe you don't make selection, or all of this stuff, there is a the practice will help, and some of those tough conversations even outside of that, you're right, if we leave it to like once a year, of course it's hard, because it's this big hairy beast that we don't want to deal with. Whereas the practice with it, we become more comfortable with hearing our voices and hearing and feeling ourselves, like in our nerves or our whatever, being in that space but still talking about it. So we learn there's a safety in like, oh, I know that I'm not going to fall apart, because like my brain knows that I've been able to have this kind of conversation before. So even though I feel uncomfortable, this discomfort isn't going to kill me.
And it's normal. Like we normalized tough conversations. If you want to be in an elite team that wants to be the best team in the world, there's 27 players, of which only 16 get selected. This is normal. Like you're not feeling like the only person in the whole world who's ever felt bad or said something they shouldn't. This is what elite sport is. And as long as you follow up some of the stupid stuff that we say or do,
which we will, we're human.
Of course we will, mate. When I'm striving for 1% of perfection, 27 blokes on a training field, 49 weeks a year, we're going to say stuff that we either didn't mean or didn't want to come out like that. Once people know that that's normal, that it's going to go wrong and it's going to be very uncomfortable, then the conversations become easier. And I think that our team became elite communicators. That's a very nice thing to say, because that's not elite runners. That's
so
not elite
nice.
goal scorers. So very, very happy and kind of proud of that. Over
you should be
15 years we weren't, but for a period of time we were.
Yeah, you should be proud of that, because let me tell you, people will fucking ignore and avoid communication like anything. Like they will just. So I think that's a real testament. But I also, you've mentioned this a couple of times, like just chipping away in the 1%ers and just like kind of trusting that, not only in training, because that's a big thing in the sports world as well, like just work on the 1%ers, but also those little 1%ers and how you show up and lead, and how you shift your leadership, and how you show up and communicate, and have the tough conversation, and just keep repeating that little by little, right? Do you think that
very, very important? Multiple, and this why we kind of started with why I love the side of the game that's more than just the technical or the tactical. This is why sports or sports organizations, business, is why people are understanding this holistic, well-rounded people are so important in an organization. Because if all you can do is write the best speech, or type the best program, or run the best race, like you can be so much more. I think that's why, for my focus with working with the young athletes, and I oversee all of the 16 to kind of 23-year-old nationally identified players in Australia.
Nice.
Is what we're saying, like, guys, we're working with you at 16 or 17 years old. You know what's important? Of course, tackling, running, trapping, but dual career. Like if you come into the national program as a 21-year-old and you don't have a career apart from hockey, it's getting less and less likely that you're going to achieve success. We've got very, very well-rounded athletes because the sport requires it. They don't get paid enough money. They have a high level of requirements, but also the balance between having a life, having a career, and being a sports person is able to happen now. And I think my aim certainly is to provide better young people to the national program, because I think they'll be better players in the future.
Yeah.
You know, if you go over to a national centralised program in Perth where hockey's based, and you're studying and you have a good relationship crew or a friendship group, a good relationship, you work on your own, you know, well-being and health and all of that stuff, then you go to hockey and you do the hockey. So it's massive importance for me. If I was a business, I'd be working on the people side, and everyone knows it, but not all do it.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Like and that was going to be my next question anyway, was like, did you notice that those skills helped your transition? Because I always have this kind of like a concern, but like we see so much of when professional athletes retire and their mental health or their emotional health just drops because maybe they haven't had the structures set up to support them, or they've invested so much in that sport that they identify so much of it, like that there's not really, they don't know who they are afterwards and everything else that can come with that. So
it's huge. Yeah. And I mean, the professional codes, especially, that it hits them harder because they're earning so much money that while you're doing it, you don't see a need for anything else. You know, for me, I understood how important it was because I knew that the day that I retired, it's over. Like, I've got to have a job. I've never had super. I have no money in my account. I don't have any holidays. I don't have any leave loading. I don't have any long service leave, nothing, you know? So I understood, you know, my wife had her first child. I was 30 years old, 29 or 30. I started to understand, like, if it comes to an end, I've got nothing. And all I thought was that I want to play for another 4 or 5 years. But if you get a bad injury and you're 30, 31, you can be done. Like, when you're 21, you're not done. So it really hit me that I needed to put more focus into my life outside of hockey. And certainly for me, it was a huge change. Like, when I started working, I was working 3 days a week while I was still captaining the national program, playing at the Com Games, playing at the Olympics. I was still working. I had this really nice outlook on where I'd go to next. So I think that's important. I think the other part that probably sports still don't do as well as they should is that we cannot gloss over that there is a massive black hole when you retire. You know, like, especially if you're in the sport for a long time. I played for 15 years for Australia.
And that's a long time. Like, that's all of your formative adult years.
So there is a hole. And I think for me, like, we shouldn't downplay how big that hole can be for some people. But what we need to be upskilling and encouraging and enhancing is that this is going to happen. You're probably going to feel like this. That's quite normal. You're not the only athlete struggling. And what else is in your life? And for me, like, I lost hockey and I became, you know, the Com Games opening ceremony flag walking out in front of millions and millions of people. 8 days later, my career was over for good. I finished at the Com Games on the Sunday, closing ceremony on the Monday, and I went to work on Tuesday.
Oh, wow. You didn't even have any like decompression time.
No. But I'd been working for 3 years before, so it was just normal for me to go back to work. So,
was everyone real nice to you at work that week, at least?
They certainly were. They certainly were. They were very nice. When I say work, like, I was there.
You showed up.
I may not have been at my absolute most productive, but I was there.
You're like, well, like, I'm in the office. I'm in the building.
But so that part for me was, you know, you lose a part, and it is very, very hard, but it's even harder if you have nothing else. So why not make it a little bit easier by chipping away at it for 4 or 6 years in advance? And I mean, there's still going to be a black hole. Like, there is, because you go from a star to nobody.
Like, it's a transition of a big part of your life. You know, like, you graduate high school, that's a transition from what you've known into what you don't know, and like everything from there. So Thank you so much for sharing a
No
little bit of
drama.
your story and having a chat with me. I really loved what came out of this and everything that we got to talk about today, because it's stuff that I like nerd out about a lot anyway. So it's like
Yeah,
it's
of
nice to
course.
hear it and go, yeah, let's talk about. So thank you so much, and thank you for shedding like a light on some of those important aspects for people as well, just to have that awareness around, and maybe a little bit of motivation, whether they're an athlete or not, around how they can be more self-led as
Oh, I
well.
think so. Yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
the importance of people for organisations, for sporting,
Mm,
for sporting clubs, for national, state sporting orgs, for young, for for teachers. Like the importance of people
mm,
is right now more vital than ever before. Like we have to spend more time on people. And yeah, okay, like we want elite athletes and we want people in a business sense to be hitting KPIs and doing that, but it can't
mm.
be at the expense of the person, the
Yeah.
well-being of the person, the relationships, the people. So I think for me, that's a really important part of my role now. And I think that's why I focus on, upskilling parents, bringing them along for
Yeah.
the journey because they play such an important part. You got to for me in my role, you got to make the athletes feel a major level of care. Like,
Mm,
hey, come on and watch these 10 videos of hockey. Yeah, but you don't even know my name.
yeah.
So are you getting the best out of them? No way. So that's why you
No.
do all of the people work first. You
Yeah.
make sure that, you showcase the importance of for me, dual careers, mental
Mm,
health and well-being, transitioning from school, going into uni, transitioning into work. You showcase all of that importance. And then you say, oh, and here's the video, here's the camp, here's the comp, here's your training uniform.
yeah.
And that's for me, that's the biggest thing that I can influence in my position, is that I've got a level of respect in the game, but you get respect by respecting people. And
Hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, it definitely shows in your work as well. And it sounds like it's highlighting more of a quality of life rather than just this list of achievements, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, going back to the same thing that we said at the beginning, like, what is the point if it doesn't, like, what is the point if it doesn't feel
Mm.
fulfilling or anything like that? So,
Very true. So keep doing the work that you're doing, Jess.
oh,
I'm
thanks.
sure that no doubt that they're enjoying it as well. So keep that up.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.